So this afternoon's workshop is Thesis and Dissertation Process, Steps for Formatting Review and Common Mistakes. We are joined by Dr. Jennifer Stevens, the Thesis and Dissertation Manager. And in this workshop, we will aim to develop an understanding of the formatting review process, develop an understanding on where to seek information regarding the formatting review process, and learn to format submissions properly and avoid common mistakes and pitfalls. That's it for me. I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Dr. Stevens, to get us started.
All right, thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you all. So thank you so much for having me today. If you were on here earlier, I mentioned I'm alumni of the GRWB Writing Bootcamp program and of UNLV, obviously. So always happy to come and do these. The formatting process for your thesis and dissertation is always one of those things that some people know about, some people don't know too much about it. They might see it at the last minute, oh, this is a step we have to do. So it's always good to give people an idea about what kind of expectations there are for the formatting and what exactly it is we want you to have ready to turn in. So this is the main website here that we'll be talking about all day, grad.td at unlv.edu, or I'm sorry, email address that we'll be talking about today. So feel free to always send questions to that email address, and if it's not, our team will get you to the right place. But if you ever have any questions or want to make sure that you're doing the right thing or on track, always feel free to reach out to us at any time. So today we have a few things that we're going to discuss. As Alyssa mentioned in the intro, I'm going to be going over how you can prepare for your format review, go over a couple of different resources that we provide students to make sure that it's an easy process for you, or as easy as possible. And then I'll talk about when and how to submit your actual document for the review, go over what that process looks like, what exactly is going to happen, how the reviewer will give you your feedback on what different corrections you have to make, and then we'll talk about some steps that you have to take once your format review is completed. And then finally today we'll go over some of those most common formatting issues, right? So things that we've seen over the years that students might struggle with, or little pitfalls that might hold people up. So you might hear me say this several times today, but the earlier the better with the formatting stuff. So we always just want to give individuals the biggest heads up on issues they might have and how to resolve those. All right, so after your thesis defense or your dissertation or doctoral project defense, this is when you're going to have to really start thinking about your formatting. So after your defense, the first thing you're going to want to do is complete all the edits that your committee gives you. Once you submit your document for format review, the only changes that you're allowed to make is to the actual formatting. So the different things that we're telling you to correct, they don't want you to make any major changes to the actual text. So always make sure you have everything taken care of that your committee wants you to do. And then you can kind of start focusing on, those different things that you need to get ready for the grad college. And we'll go over some of the resources that we have on the next slide available to you all for that. And so then after you take a look at those resources with your document, you're just going to want to go through and make sure you have, all of the different required sections. Make sure you have your cover page formatted the right way, all the correct information on there, and all of that good stuff. Because again, getting ahead of the process always makes it easier once you start that actual review process. So people oftentimes will ask me, You know, how long will the review process take, or how many rounds of revisions will I have to do? And really, in my experience, the main determinant of that is going to be how well formatted it is, based on the guidelines when you submit it, right? So if someone does a really good job and tries to make it, you know, as perfect as possible, using all those resources, then typically they have an easier time, right? Let's say than someone who doesn't look at those and you're kind of starting from scratch. So always make sure you have it as close to those guidelines that we give as possible. So, as I mentioned before already, we have several different resources that we provide students to help with that formatting process. And we'll go over each of these in a little bit of detail, just so you know what's available for you. But we have formatting manuals, PDFs that we make. We have some different YouTube videos, which is fun. That's something new that we've been working on. And then we also offer some one-on-one formatting office hours, because every student is unique, right? There are these general guidelines, but maybe there's something in particular that you're struggling with or need help with. So we offer that one-on-one help. And then, as I mentioned before, always feel free to email us at that TD email address. And I definitely will share that with you some more throughout this presentation. So the first resource we're going to talk about are our formatting manuals. And these provide step-by-step instructions for what should be included in that particular section or area of your final document. So I'm not sure how big it is for you all to see on there, but on that picture to the bottom right, this is from the website there, screenshot. These are the different sections for the formatting manuals that we have. So you can see number 1, we have a cover page manual, which is a required section, all the way down through number 16, your curriculum vitae, what needs to be included on that, how that should be formatted. And all of these can be found on the website here. These are all clickable links, the ones that are underlined. So feel free to go ahead and pull those up if you have this open, or later on when you go to look at these resources in the shell, you can click on those to get to the website. But you'll go here to the Graduate College Thesis and Dissertation Guidelines website, and then under number 5, you'll see Organization of Thesis and Dissertation. And that's where all of those can be found. And the manuals are nice because it has those written step-by-step instructions, but then we also provide some visuals in there also. So for example, if you include tables and figures in your final document, you can see here number 8 and 9, we have different manuals for how to do that and what kind of spacing is required, let's say. So that's one of those common formatting issues we might talk about at the end. And on this TD website, Grad College Thesis and Dissertation Guidelines, you'll also find some other documents besides the formatting manuals that are useful. So definitely go over there and check that out. And one of the ones that we have that we'll go over at the end is that most common formatting issues document. Okay, and so our newest addition to our resources, as I mentioned, are our YouTube videos. Again, we have it linked here, so you can just click on that once we're done or in your own time and kind of take a look at those. It says coming soon because we only have 3 for now. We're still working on making the other ones. But for now, we have the cover page, abstract, and copyright page. So always a fun resource. We wanted to make these just so students would have, again, some type of visual on how to do these things. So these videos walk you through, again, what should be included in that section and how to properly do it. So just click on that link and it will take you to one of those three. And another good thing about the YouTube videos, we try and make them pretty short. Everything should be under 5 minutes is our goal, because we want to make sure that you get that information, but in an efficient way, right? You don't want to spend hours watching different videos and going through documents, right? So that's why we have all of these different resources, depending on what your preference is. Okay, and then finally, we have our thesis and dissertation formatting office hours. And this is where you can get one-on-one assistance for, any problems that you're having. Maybe you can't get the page numbers to format correctly, or maybe you want us to check something before you submit it for your revisions, just to make sure that you're on the right track. And this is where you can do that. So to set up the formatting office hours, you'll email the address again at the bottom there, grad.td@unlv.edu, and set up those one-on-one appointments. Typically, it's myself doing those, but it's really helpful because, again, I'll have students share their documents with me, and then I can share my screen like how we are now, and I can kind of work through different issues with them, help them with anything you need to get your paper to that right place. And our office hours are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 2 p.m. And right now they're all virtual. So it'll be a Zoom meeting like how we're doing now, or a Google Meets meeting, but always a good resource. If you do have some questions, or again, just want to make sure it's as far along as it can be towards that properly formatted document. All right, and then our last resource we have again is that TD email address. And like I say, when in doubt, always send an email. Everyone on the team is very friendly, very helpful. And so like I mentioned before, even if your question might have to do with something involving finishing up or graduation, or getting, your paperwork in, or your documents, is everything signed, or, all of these different questions, always feel free to send that to that grad.td email address. And we'll get you to the right person, or get the information to you that you need, that you have a question on. And then if you have any questions about formatting, or, wrapping up the final process, you can always feel free to reach out to me as well. And that's my email address there, jennifer.stevens@unlv.edu. Let me go back. So the reason why we have all of these different resources, right, and really try and make it as simple as possible, is because we know that this is a very stressful time, right? It takes so much time and energy to actually write these documents, complete your research, and you're going through rounds and rounds of edits with your advisor and your committee. So we know this can be a very stressful time. And since it is required, we do want to make it as smooth as possible for you, as little stress as possible. But do know that in the end, it is really worth it, because those final documents, once they're all formatted correctly and published up on the ProQuest, our library website, for people to go and see, they do look so nice and professional. And that's what we really want. We want your final work that you've spent so much time on to represent that, right? And reflect that hard effort that you've put in. So that's kind of the reason, everyone has to go through this process. But like I say, we do try and make it as painless as possible. And my advice is always, again, the earlier you kind of start thinking about these things, or taking a look at the website, and just kind of keeping it in the back of your mind as something you have to do, it really isn't that bad. In terms of like technical things that you have to do, it can just be tedious, some of it, or take some time to complete. So as long as you know that you're going to have to be doing this, and that all of these different tools are there to help you, it really isn't too bad. So now I'm going to go over how exactly you submit your document and then what that final process is going to look like. So let's say you've completed your defense, you had your defense, you have all of the feedback incorporated that your committee wants you to do. So they're good with your final document. You take a look at all of the resources and make sure that your final PDF is as close as you can, get it to the formatting requirements that we want. And then you're ready to upload for your format review. So you're going to go back to that thesis and dissertation guidelines website again. And this is where you're going to be uploading your document. So if you go, everything is numbered on there. And if you go down to number 10 to format review, it'll look like this. And you'll see where it says submission website. It's a hyperlink. And this will take you to the submission portal where you'll upload that final PDF and enter some information like your NSHE, your chair's name and email address, just different things that we'll need as the process wraps up, but super easy. Okay, and then after your document is submitted, we will get it out to one of the reviewers on our team. And this is a picture or a screenshot of the checklist that we use, or the first page anyway. And this checklist can also be found on that thesis and dissertation guidelines website. And this is what we use to go through your document and make sure everything is to the publisher's standards in terms of what all UNLV final papers should look like. And it's a pretty straightforward process. You can expect to hear back in about 4 business days is usually the turnaround time. But again, it kind of depends on the time of year. So if you're submitting, let's say right when the semester starts, or even kind of mid-semester, it might be faster than that 4-day turnaround, or right on there. But then when it starts getting busy, like if everyone waits for the deadline, that happens sometimes, most of the time, right? We get a flood of documents in, and we do have a small team. So then it might take a little longer, right? So always try and keep that in the back of your mind. If you're on a time constraint or in a time crunch, please make sure that you give yourself enough time to go through this process. And then, so after about 4 days or so, give or take, you'll see something, you'll get an email from your reviewer with something like this here, the checklist, and where that arrow is, this is where the reviewer will put the numbers of the different sections that you have corrections. So number 1, they're all numbered out like this. So it'll say 1 and 10, let's say. And then under number 1, you'll go to the box at the bottom of that section, and the reviewer puts very clearly what exactly you have to change. So for example, they would have a 1 next to that arrow, and then in the box at the bottom of that section, they would put a comment like, please make sure your title of your document on your cover page is in all capital letters and centered, right? Something like that. But very clearly telling you what exactly is wrong and how to fix it. So there's not a lot of guessing work done on the student side. So we try and be as clear as possible. But again, always reach out if you have any questions on what they want you to do, or set up an office hours appointment to walk through that. And that will definitely be helpful. All right, so after you get that checklist, you'll go ahead and revise your document, make any corrections that you'll need to do. And again, depending on how much work you put in preparing it, it might be 1 or 2 rounds, right, or more. Just kind of depends, but it does typically involve a couple rounds of going back and forth and taking care of all of those small little changes. But then once you have completed all of the things they want you to complete, you'll get an email like it shows here at the bottom that says, congratulations, your document has formatting approval. And then you're ready to go on to the next step, the final step, I should say. So after, or when we send that approval email, we CC your RPC coordinator on there, and your graduate college RPC coordinator, or retention progression completion, is what that stands for. Once they have those, then you'll go ahead, or they'll go ahead and insert your approval page, which will be the second page of your document. And then they'll send that to you. And then once you look at that and just kind of double check it to make sure everyone's name is correct, everything looks correct, then they'll go ahead and send you the upload to ProQuest instructions. And then that is literally the final step. And sometimes this even takes place after the actual graduation ceremony. So sometimes people get worried or nervous because, let's say it's, you know, the day or two before graduation, but they're still completing the formatting process. Like, can I still graduate? Things like that. And the answer is yes. The formatting and all of this, as long as you're staying on top of it and communicating with us, it does not impact, you know, whether or not like you graduate. That will still happen. Sometimes the uploading happens after, you know, all of that, after the semester's over. So always just make sure you look at the different deadlines and stuff. But this is the final step for being done with the graduation process. You're going to upload your final document to ProQuest, and then that's the last thing you have to complete. Okay, so it does say thank you. Again, there's that GRWB email address, but I do want to go over some of those common formatting mistakes. I see we have some questions in the chat. Evelyn, are there formatting resources applicable to white papers? Yes, so we do have, they don't really call them or like turn them white papers, but what we do have are a document on that website that shows if students are doing what they call like the 3-article dissertation option, let's say. And this is where if students have published articles already or papers, and then they use maybe 2 or 3 of those to comprise their dissertation, we do have a document that shows you like how to format that specifically. I believe that's what you're asking. If not, please clarify, or please let me know, and I'll look into that a little more, give you some more information. But yeah, in terms of you know, papers that are already completed and published, and you're using those, we do have a document that goes through how you put that together. But basically, it's the exact same as the other formatting. It just might have a couple of little differences. Like one thing would be that like each article would then be its own chapter kind of thing, but it has to be written as one cohesive document. So you will be adding maybe like you know, something that kind of ties the pieces together at the end, or some kind of segue like that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So we are, there are a few of us on here that are in a professional doctorate program. And so our paper isn't a dissertation, but it is a white paper.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not pulling from published white papers, we're writing the white paper. So yeah, so I was wondering if, and it's APA format, so I don't know if you guys have something.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. That makes more sense now. I know. Okay. Sorry about that. Yes. So yours will probably called doctoral project. Usually that's like what will be used instead of, like when you see on the resources, if it says thesis or dissertation or whatever, the only difference will be that you'll be writing doctoral project, let's say, on your cover page, instead of you know, thesis or dissertation. It'll just say doctoral project. Does that make sense? But in terms of formatting, it's all the rest is the same. And I'm really glad you brought up like the APA, MLA, like different styles. So for us at the grad college, you can use any style you want. once you take a look at some of those resources, you'll see that most of what they want you to do is basically just make your document consistent. So let's say you use APA, you know, but then all of a sudden in one section, it's like a different format, or, you know, things are just off or wonky. They're not going to say, oh, you're not following APA guidelines, but they will tell you like, hey, you need to make sure all your headings, major headings, are formatted the same. So they all need to be centered or aligned left or bold or not, or, you know, all these things. But yeah, oh, you're so welcome. Okay, good. I'm glad that helps. But yeah, the main thing we look for is like consistency. So another example would be like, for different reference sections, right? We don't have any rules in terms of like what style that needs to be formatted as, but we do have things like no text in the document can have like color, let's say. So sometimes students will have hyperlinks that are blue, you know how it automatically changes it. So we would just go through and tell you like, please make all of your text black in your document. For example, you have blue hyperlinks or whatever it is, you know. So we won't have you doing any changes like that in terms of, you know, oh, you're not following this guideline or that. That part we just kind of assume and default to your committee that it's up to your discipline standards, because each discipline is going to be a little bit different with that stuff. But yeah, very good question. It's all about like consistency and stuff mostly. So great question. Thank you. And then let me see, Kara. Looked at the thesis and dissertation page, how captions for tables and figures can be formatted. Okay, yes. So for sure, always feel free to do an appointment, and you can send it to me, you know, once you email, like you can email myself or that TD. And what I'll usually do is have students send me their document and I can kind of look and see. But the only thing that is required for captions for tables and figures is, and it's kind of a big thing, I guess, and I'll make sure that it goes in, it says that in there in the future. So let me write a note to look at that. Captions. Okay. But the only thing that is kind of different about this is that they include any caption or description or anything like that. They include that as part of the actual table or figure itself. And you will, I think they might have an example on there that shows this, but and that's the same with the labels, right? So if you're putting table 1 and the heading or title for that table, they include that as like part of the table itself. So when there's, you know, you're reading the different rules about spacing, which is if you have text above or below the table or figure, you need 2 double-spaced blank lines separating it from that, if that makes sense. So if there's a paragraph above your table, you would just go to the end of that paragraph, since it's already in double space, and hit enter or return twice. And then that would give you your 2 blank lines. And then you'll have your table or figure. And if there's nothing else below it, or that's the bottom of the page, then you're good. But let's say it's a small one and there's like text underneath it, then you'll need those 2 double-spaced blank lines under that before your text begins again. And that would include those captions or the number and heading and all of that. Like that's all considered part of that table or figure. So you want to keep that right next to it. And then you'll have this spacing on either side of it that will make sure, you know, it's clear that, hey, this is the table and this is the comments and everything, the description or whatever it is for the reader. Does that make sense? But yes, always feel free. Okay, cool. But always feel free, like I say, to send us an email and just say, hey, I think I'm doing this right, but I just want someone to take a look, make sure. And we always are more than happy to do that for you. Because again, if you just have like 1 or 2 tables, right, no big deal to kind of fix those. But if you have like 15 or so, something like that in your document, we want to make sure we're not wasting your time either, so always feel free if there's anything. Oh, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so always make sure if there's a lot like that, maybe do 1 or 2 or something and then send it to me, and we can even have like an office hours, right? Because that's why we do that also, is that sometimes in the manual, it's written a certain way and we have to word it a certain way so that it's like technically correct, but it makes it sound almost like harder or more confusing than it actually is. So during the office hours, it's nice to kind of like sit there and we can show you like, okay, this is all you have to do is like hit enter twice, like I say, and things like that. So always feel free to do that. Any other questions about that, about the formatting stuff? I did want to go over really quick. So you might have questions, but you might wait until after this. Either way is fine. Feel free to just put it in the chat there, or let us know if you have a question. But I did want to go over the most common formatting issues document that we have. So let me share my screen again. All right. And this can be found on that thesis and dissertation guidelines website also. But these are just some of those, again, common things that we see students doing that it just makes it easier if we just throw them out there in one document, right? Or let students know that, hey, I need to, pay attention to these different issues while I'm finishing up. So you can either look here or pull that up from the one we sent on Canvas. Let me try and make it a little bit bigger if I can, just so everybody can see that. All right. So some of the different things that we see, first, make sure on your cover page, and we have, again, the cover page manual linked there, so you can just go in and check that out. But one thing is with the dates, we always want to put the month and the year that your degree is being conferred. So everyone's documents will either say May, August, or December. So no matter, when in the spring you defended or finished, you'll always put May. For fall, you'll always put December. And then for summer, you'll always put August, and then whatever that year is. So do check out that cover page. I would say that is one place where students have issues or, tend to have problems, but only if they don't look at the manual and stuff. Because again, it's really easy and simple once you see like what they want on there. It's just if you haven't looked at that or don't know, then you might need to add some information. Okay, and then some basic things like the document is required to have 1-inch margins on all sides. So even in your appendix, let's say, for tables and figures, just make sure everything is fitting within those margins. And that next bullet point there just basically says, again, that this includes the appendix, tables, figures, curriculum vitae, the whole document has to be within those margins. And then this next one, I mentioned this a minute ago, but all figures and tables have to be separated from the text by that two double-spaced blank lines, or 2 blank line breaks, we call it also, double-spaced line breaks. And this is for the reader. This is a rule from our publisher that if someone is scrolling through your document, let's say, they can quickly spot and easily spot that, hey, this is a figure within the text, or this is a table within the text, to make it kind of stand out. And sometimes when you're looking at just one page at a time, and you go through and add those 2 double space blank lines, you might feel like it's a lot of space, like, wow, why is there so much blank space here? But actually they would rather have more space than not enough. So let's say, you know, you're going through your document and you start adding all these spaces, and then, oops, I have a table that now half of the table is on one page and half is on the other page. The rule is, you know, these tables and stuff can be split, but if it can fit on one page, they want it to be. So if it's a larger table, let's say, and there's a paragraph above it, and you're doing your spacing, and oh shoot, now half of it's on the next page, they would just want you to move that to the top of the next page and then go on from there. So again, more spacing is better than not enough. Or if it's on its own page, you know, that's fine too. But they really want to make sure that it's clear for the reader, you know, that this is the text, and then here's a figure, or here's a table. And we do have some examples on there that you can take a look at. I mentioned this one also. All text in the document has to be black. So again, any URLs that you have in there where it changes it automatically, just make sure you go through and highlight those and make that text black. You do not have to unlink them or anything like that. It's just purely so that everything is matching and looks nice. Then things like, again, consistency. Everything is about consistency. So if you're doing it in one section or chapter, make sure it's all the way through like that. And this includes your font that you're using and the size and style and everything like that. So one thing to look for is page numbers. Sometimes students will be doing the page numbers and it like does it in whatever the automatic font is for that setting in Word for you. But your text is something different. So just make sure that all matches, right? So all text have to be consistent throughout. Oops. And then the last one for that first page, make sure all of your major section headings are consistent. And all of those headings are any major section of your document, right? So this includes like front material, like your abstract, acknowledgements, if you have one, maybe you have a preface, then your table of contents, which is a required section, all of your chapter headings, that would be a major one as well. And then like your references, appendix, if you have one, and curriculum vitae, all of those headings should be exactly the same. So if you want them all centered and in all caps or whatever, that's fine. Or if you want them aligned left and title casing and bold or whatever it is, how you decide to do it, any way you decide to do it is okay with us. It just all has to match throughout. So again, consistency is kind of the big thing there. And then finally, in terms of like spacing and things, everything has to be double spaced. There are some exceptions. If you go on and look at, there's actually a spacing manual. It says something like spacing and I forget how they word it, but it's spacing and things like that for your document. And in there, it will give you a list of all the different sections that are allowed to be single spaced. So for example, if you have those extended quotes, right, that are usually single spaced, those block quotes in there, that's totally fine to have a single space. And same with tables and figures. You were asking about, you know, the description for the tables and figures or the comments for the tables and figures, that's allowed to be single spaced so that you don't have, you know, big old chunks of text running on and on. So there are certain exceptions for that. But in general, every part of the document should be double spaced, including your table of contents. And if you include a list of tables or figures, that will be double spaced as well. So after hearing about those, let me see if anyone has any other ones in the chat. But so after hearing about those, just wondering if anyone has any questions, that you can think of that stands out, or anything that is maybe like unclear. Because to me, everything is clear. I do it so much. So anything like that. All right, so not yet, which is good. That's not a bad thing. But like I say, always feel free, because you're still in the process, right? And it's very overwhelming. I know it's like so much to think about. But do know that even though there's all these different manuals and things like that, it really shouldn't be overwhelming, or try not to get too nervous about it, because most of it, again, you'll probably do naturally just from what your committee is expecting of you. So like including a table of contents, right? Like most committees will have you do that anyway. But if you do need any help with anything, or like I said, want us to check anything, we're always more than happy to do that or answer any questions. All right. Anyone else? Or I think that might be it. I'm not sure, but I know it's a lot to take in at once. Like, oh, what else?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise this afternoon with us. And thank you for those who did have some questions. And what an awesome resource to you all.